They never saw it coming, and they still don't. The left continues to scramble for answers, utterly baffled by Kamala Harris's spectacular unraveling. But instead of pausing for some long-overdue introspection, they've chosen the path of denial, spinning excuses so wild they're starting to resemble satire. The moment things really came unglued? A recent panel on Real Time with Bill Maher. Even Bill, an icon of liberal commentary, couldn't pretend anymore. He confronted the absurdity head-on, slicing through the usual talking points and exposing the uncomfortable truths lurking just beneath the surface. The tension was thick, and then came the twist. Out of nowhere, Hollywood heavyweight Michael Douglas, yes, that Michael Douglas, chimed in. And not with the expected script. He echoed Bill's sentiment with a razor-sharp dose of truth that silenced the room. You could practically hear jaws hitting the floor. We're breaking down that explosive moment and what it reveals about a deeper problem. The left's refusal to face reality isn't just denial, it's self-sabotage. This isn't a minor misstep, it's a seismic shift, and most of them don't even realize the ground is cracking beneath them.
Might emerge as the strongest Democratic opposition leader in the next Trump era. Oh, well, that's a good question. I mean, like Adam Schiff, he won right big. And
he won big. I like Westmore.
Westmore's fantastic. He's in Maryland.
Yep.
But who's going to be the one? Gavin Newsom, we have here in this state. He's already like called the legislature to. I mean, Trump hasn't done anything yet, but I understand the.
This was the problem. You know, there was a 2014 study that showed that Fortune 500 companies were more likely to pick a female CEO if the company was struggling, basically setting women up for the big job, but to also fail. If they did well, fine. But if they failed, like, look, we have a female CEO while failing. And that's what I feel like they did to Kamala Harris.
Now that has to be the most ridiculous excuse I've heard yet. And that's saying a lot, considering I've sat through more than my fair share of Joy Reid's mental gymnastics. So believe me when I say, this one takes the cake. Blaming Kamala Harris's political nosedive on her gender isn't just dishonest, it's downright laughable. Let's stop pretending this is some misunderstood trailblazer story. The truth. Harris didn't fizzle out because she's a woman. She failed because she was an uninspiring, inauthentic candidate who never built a real connection with voters. No clear message, no genuine charisma, no grassroots energy. Just political packaging without substance. And yet here we go again, recycling the same tired narrative they used with Hillary back in 2016. Only this time, it feels even more desperate, like watching a bad sequel with a weaker script. But the spin cycle didn't end there. Just when it seemed like the excuses couldn't get more absurd, Sarah chimed in with yet another grasp at straws to defend Harris. That's when Bill Maher, and surprisingly, Michael Douglas, finally jumped in, cutting through the fog and delivering a dose of raw, unfiltered reality. It wasn't pretty, but it was long overdue.
3-month campaign and she was supposed to introduce herself to the American people. No wonder people were Googling, did Joe Biden drop out? And so...
No. No. You're saying 3 months wasn't long enough?
I mean, it was too long. It was long enough.
It was long enough.
If they had a primary...
It's not that they didn't have time to introduce. They met someone and didn't like them.
If they had a primary, they wouldn't have picked her. And if they had,
That's
she would have been
different.
able to rough out those edges that then she basically has to start from scratch with a campaign team she didn't hire that didn't like her, right? It was his team. And so I wonder if that next Democratic person, maybe someone's not even on our radar yet. Because frankly, when you look at the history of who's, there's two types. The one who waited in line, who was next in line, and then there's the one who comes out. That's Obama, that's Clinton, that's Reagan to some extent.
Let's be real. If even the Amish were dialed in during the last election, then there's simply no defending the cluelessness of these so-called mainstream commentators. Seriously. The Amish? Yes, the Amish, a community that famously avoids modern technology, doesn't own televisions, and couldn't care less about your trending hashtags or political hot takes on Twitter. And yet, they knew. They knew what was happening, they saw through the noise, and many of them made the rare decision to step out of political seclusion and show up in record numbers to vote for Trump. That's not just surprising, it's a cultural earthquake. When a community that typically avoids the political spotlight decides it's time to act, you should probably ask why, not pretend it didn't happen. But instead of facing that reality, MSNBC analyst John Heilemann did what they do best, shrugged it off with another excuse-laden narrative, doubling down on Sarah's already paper-thin defense of Kamala Harris. At this point, it's like they're trying to outdo each other in a contest of elite detachment. The more the facts stack up, the more absurd the spin becomes, almost like denial has become the brand.
Sitting vice president, and you get put on elevated to the top of the ticket 107 days ahead of the election. I think that is a very high degree of difficulty put on anybody, and I do not think she is the perfect candidate. I tend to agree with Sarah that probably in a fully litigated primary, she probably would not have been the Democratic nominee, but we'll never know that. But I will tell you that, there's never been anybody who's had the difficulty of that situation, elevated that late in the campaign.
Why? Needed to run away from
Bill, I don't know if you know this, but the Vice President of the United States is basically shoved in a broom closet for 3.5 years.
I know.
You couldn't.
She was more popular in there.
Yes, well.
I mean, this idea that in a mass media age, that 107 days is not long enough to know somebody?
You are way overestimating the American people in terms of what their ability.
No.
You have someone like Donald Trump has become a universally known, understood, loved by some, hated by others over the course of being omnipresent for 8 years.
Okay.
Barack Obama becomes president of the United States after running for 2 years as president, runs a 50-state primary, is on television, does dozens of Democratic debates, and by the time at the end of that, most people knew who he was.
We all saw the warning signs, clear as day, back in the 2020 Democratic primaries. Kamala Harris's campaign didn't just lose steam, it never even made it to Iowa. She bowed out before a single vote was cast. That wasn't just a misstep, it was a red alert moment. A campaign with no traction, no grassroots energy, and no compelling message. It didn't stall, it flatlined. And yet, fast forward a few months, and Harris was handed the political equivalent of a golden parachute. Massive donor backing, gushing media coverage, and wall-to-wall endorsements from Hollywood's elite. Every lever of institutional power was pulled in her favor. And still, she managed to blow through nearly $1 billion and finish her run $20 million in debt. That's not just political failure. It's an implosion on a scale rarely seen in modern politics. But here's the kicker. Instead of owning up to it, commentators like John Heilemann actually have the gall to suggest the voters were the problem. His smug tone, dripping with condescension, perfectly captures the mindset of the coastal media class, aloof, self-satisfied, and wildly disconnected from the people they claim to understand. And it shows. Because when you're this out of touch, it's not just your message that falls flat, it's your entire grip on reality.
Small dollar donors are arguably the worst thing that's happened to our politics, as it turned out.
It's a small dollar donor didn't make $20 billion. No.
A lot of it.
Some of it, yeah.
A lot of it. And they represent about 2% of our country.
There's a few special PACs in there that saw $100 million plus.
Those are bad too.
I think you can believe that you could have shorter elections in America, but it's not like we don't know. In Britain, for instance, when you have a short election, it's not like you don't know who the leader of the party is for months and years before that.
But you're either the person who's Googling the day before, did Biden drop out, or in a week. Did anyone in this audience not know enough about Kamala Harris pretty much after a week to make a decision? Yeah, it's ridiculous. We just get sicker.
Let's talk about the two massive red flags no one on that panel seemed willing to confront. First, how in the world did small donors become a problem? We're talking about everyday Americans, teachers, truck drivers, single parents, willing to part with their hard-earned dollars because they actually believe in a candidate. That's not a flaw in the system. That is the system working as it should. It's the purest form of political engagement. When pundits scoff at this, what they're really doing is sneering at the people behind those donations. And that says far more about their elitism than it ever could about the voters. Now the second issue, this fantasy about shortening the election cycle. Sure, it sounds nice in theory. Less noise, less burnout. But who gets to enforce that timeline? Because the moment you try to restrict when a candidate can speak, campaign, or connect with voters, you're trampling on core First Amendment rights. Political speech doesn't come with a curfew. And let's not forget, launching early has never guaranteed success. History is littered with early frontrunners who fizzled out before the real race even began. But rather than wrestle with any of these inconvenient truths, the panel just kept spinning the same tired excuses. That is, until Bill Maher, clearly done playing referee, stepped in and cut through the noise with a reality check they never saw coming. The moment was tense, raw, and long overdue.
You have to make all these excuses for her. This, like I said, all this was this week was people who said, "Oh, she ran a flawless campaign. How ridiculous!" Or it's racism. This is an old playbook.
Yes, I didn't say any of those things.
I know, but I've heard a lot of these things, and I think America's perfectly willing to elect a woman. They just didn't like the last two that were put up.
Exactly. This has never been about gender or identity of any kind. What voters actually care about is straightforward: policy, performance, and the ability to articulate a clear, compelling vision for the country. When a candidate fails on all three fronts, it doesn't matter what demographic box they check, people tune out. Period. Trying to guilt the public into voting based on identity alone isn't just lazy politics, it's emotional blackmail disguised as progress. And it's insulting to the intelligence of voters who are craving real leadership, not tokenism. The last election cycle made one thing abundantly clear. Americans are done with empty symbolism. They want results. They want credibility. They want someone who can actually lead. And if you're still not convinced how disconnected Kamala Harris is from that reality, just watch her recent moment in Pacific Palisades, California. No teleprompter, no curated setting, just raw optics, and not in a good way. It's the kind of candid clip that says more than 1,000 press conferences ever could. Awkward, unprepared, and completely out of step.
What's through your mind when you see this? You're here, you're now seeing it up close.
It's not only seeing it, Alex, you can smell it. You can feel it, right? So it's seeing it with our eyes, and many people have seen it. You all are covering it. But to literally be on the ground here, you can smell the smoke that was here. You can feel the toxicity, frankly, of the environment.
Yikes. Honestly, there's no better word for it. We narrowly escaped a political train wreck with her, and now all eyes are shifting west, to California. Because make no mistake, she's not fading into the background. She's circling the governorship like a hawk, and the stage is being set for her next big move. This isn't just another local race, it's a pivotal moment. The kind that tests whether voters have actually wised up or if we're stuck on a loop, doomed to repeat the same high-gloss, low-substance mistakes. The stakes? Huge. Because if the media spin wins again, we're not just dealing with déjà vu, we're rewriting the same script with even higher consequences. Now I want to hear from you. Are voters finally seeing through the PR fog, or is the illusion still holding strong? Drop your thoughts below. I'm diving into the comments with you. And if this resonated, hit share and keep the conversation alive.